Good morning. We are jumping into the second half of Psalm 24. Oh, why is that not sharing? Um, oh, maybe I gotta tell it to. Let's see. Yeah. All right. So you can see a big indentation here in Psalm 24 between verse 6 and 7. We've got a shift. We've got an indication that this is moving in a more musical direction, right? And we've got the exact same thing repeated twice here. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. And then that exact phrase, well, not exactly repeats. Um, Lift up your heads, O gates, and lift them up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. All right, so I just want to give you a little architectural lesson on the holy city, the city of Jerusalem. So, has anyone ever been? No one. Okay. So, this is a very common view even today that you would get as you make your way to the city. It's there's what's called the old city, and then there's the modern city. So the modern city is outside of it. It's got like the Sbarro pizza places and a nice little area you can walk around, and back in the late 90s, that would be the area that would get bombed. Okay. This is known as the Old City. And so the Old City refers to the biblical city. It still has all the walls around it. Inside, it still retains a lot of its ancient character and charm. But there's markets and shops and things like that. But, we're talking very ancient. But throughout the city, there are these gates. That's how you make your way into the walls, right? And so they had walls around the city to protect it from invaders. Um, there was a point, of course, when the Romans toppled the walls got rebuilt by other empires in history. Okay. And so when you go into Jerusalem today, you will enter into a gate just like this one. And, the gates are really beautiful at night. They have this nice glow to them at twilight, and the city walls have some lights on them. But I know I went through this gate a couple of times, and when I studied there some years ago, and you go in there and it goes around, opens up into like a square, and they have hotels right inside the city gate. So it's not just a matter of safety, but it's also a way that the city is beautified. All right, and so the gates here is what is thought to be the time of Nehemiah. So this is just after they returned from exile. This configuration changes throughout history as Jerusalem falls and is rebuilt, and the location of the walls changes, the location of the gates changes, but the gates have names. Okay, so the Fish Gate, the Jeshana Gate, the Valley Gate, the Dung Gate. You can probably guess what happens there. The Fountain Gate, the Water Gate, the Horse Gate, the East Gate, the Inspection Gate, and the Sheep Gate. Now, some of these gates are specifically mentioned in the Bible by name because there are things that happen around these gates. And so the architecture, the geography is a part of the biblical narrative. It's a part of the story. In fact, if we go back to Nehemiah chapter 3, verse 3, there are specifications when the walls are rebuilt for what these gates will be, right? So if we turn there to Nehemiah, the book we don't go to very often, we may have to hunt and peck around for it. Right before the book of Esther. So the title of this chapter is Rebuilding the Wall. Okay. And beginning at verse 1, then Eliashib, the high priest, rose up with his brothers, the priests, and they built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and set its doors. They consecrated it as far as the Tower of 100, as far as the Tower of Hananel. And next to him, the men of Jericho built, and next to them, Zakur, the son of Imri, built. And then, about every 3 verses here, the sons of Hassenah built the fish gate. Joiada, the son of Paseah, and Meshullam, the sons of Besadiah, repaired the gate of Yashana. Okay, so some of these gates just needed repairs. And then, you find it again. The Valley Gate is mentioned in verse 13. The Dung Gate is mentioned in verse 14. So the Dung Gate is assuming that's where they emptied all the dung from the animals. They brought it out the Dung Gate and dumped it, someplace out of people's way. Or maybe they used it for fertilizer or something like that. So, but this is where it is. Here is the temple right here. This is the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount faces which important geographical landmark mentioned frequently in the Bible? The Mount of Olives, right? So you would leave the East Gate. There'd be like a little dip of a valley, and then you could go up the Mount of Olives, and you have this very beautiful view of the front of the temple at night from the Mount of Olives, as you could sit there and just look over the city of Jerusalem. Did you go to? I did. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It was a very common thing, and it's not that far of a trek, to just go do that. And so, there were a lot of important things. The Garden of Gethsemane is on the Mount of Olives, so there's a lot of important landmarks over there. And Jesus would go there. That's where he goes, and he's arrested. But that he and his disciples go there at night, can see the temple all lit up, and that's the backdrop for Jesus being arrested, right? And so the temple faces east. God had made it to be that way, toward the Mount of Olives, and it's Mark.
How close to this? Close beside the Alamo. How large is it?
Oh, I see.
So I can see.
Yeah, no, I would say the temple is bigger than the Alamo, or I don't know. It's I would say it's certainly taller. The Temple Mount, is a big picture frame that's around the temple. And if you remember, they called it Herod's temple because, before Herod, they basically had the temple, but they didn't have the frame as much. So Herod comes along and he builds all of these colonnades that you would just, walk through. There's this description of what's called Solomon's colonnade in the New Testament, where you have columns on both sides, and it's like this nice covered patio. People would walk through there, and I believe that was probably the area where like the money changers had set themselves up, because it was a nice covered area. You're out of the sun, you're out of the elements, you've got the cool stone, and it's people could walk in these things and enjoy the beauty of being close to God's house. Because remember, not everybody could go up onto the Temple Mount. Like Gentiles could not, women could only get so far. Even the ordinary Israelites could only get so far. Only the high priest can enter into the Holy Holies once a year. So there's sort of these successive degrees of requirements for how close you can actually get to the structure. But you can watch it from a distance at night.
The Temple Mount area is about 29.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Temple Mount area.
And this whole square is the mount. And on the mount is the temple itself. Now, right now, the temple's obviously not there. You have the Dome of the Rock over here, and you have Al-Aqsa Mosque over here. So 2 Islamic structures that the Israelis want to bulldoze. So, and I've kind of mentioned this in my sermon today, and build a third temple.
So is the that whole
Temple
the whole
Mount.
city of Jerusalem, is it gated or just parts of it?
Well, I mean, in the Old Testament, the whole Old Testament city was, but then as the years go by, they enlarged it. But then the Assyrians come, the Babylonians come, they burn it, they get rid of half of it. Nehemiah comes and he builds this much of it, right? So you would get the temple here, and then you get a lot of the Israelite houses down on this side of things. And so they would go up to the temple. And then, when I told you about last week about the staircase was located right here. Herod had also put an entrance in right here, a walkway, because this thing was elevated. It was probably elevated like maybe 20 feet above ground level. So if you're just walking along outside, it's not like you could just go in. You would have to go around to the steps and go up, or go to these steps and go over the bridge. Vera? Um, Depends which conspiracy theory you want to listen to. Right.
But those people were contained within their own section. But here it's all mixed. Is it all mixed together?
Well, this is not modern Israel. I've got modern Israel on the next slide, and what you're talking about is similar to how Jerusalem is today.
Okay.
Okay. But let me just, if we look at John chapter 5, verse 2 here, it says, "Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude." So this is where, Jesus tells the man to, take up your mat and walk, because he's by this pool. The pool is fed by a spring. When the water stirs, the man would like to go down into the pool because it was refreshing to him. It's Jerusalem, it's very hot. He's got this mat because the pavement is scorching. So you have a mat with you that you carry. And so, that's by the sheep gate, which is right up here. Right. And so that's where, that took place. You have a reference to that. And then in Acts 3:2 and 3:10, you have a reference to, I believe it's the beautiful gate here. "And a man lame from birth was being carried, whom they laid daily at the gate of the temple that is called the Beautiful Gate, to ask alms of those entering the temple." Okay, so let's see. The Beautiful Gate on here, it might have been renamed. Yeah, it looks like it's not on one of these, but the gates were where people would go in and out of the city, right? And so they were places where all the beggars would set up, all the people who were selling you things. It's the place where, the book of Proverbs talks about the wife, I think, praising the husband at the city gate. When David's son Absalom was courting people's favor to overthrow David, he sets himself up outside the gate so people going to Jerusalem will encounter him on the road. So I mean, the gates are very much a part of the story. And then Revelation talks about the new heavenly Jerusalem having 12 gates, each named after I think 12 apostles. So it's from beginning to end. This is such an essential part of the story. Now here's modern Jerusalem, and they still have the gates, right? But the gates have different names for the most part. Okay, so here's the temple right here, and you have the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, like I mentioned. The western wall is what the remnant of the wall that surrounded the Temple Mount that still remains today, that the Romans did not completely obliterate. That's where all the Jewish people will gather. They'll have their prayers. They'll write their prayers on little notes, and then they jam them into the crevices of the Western Wall because it was a part of the original Temple Mount. So it's a very ceremonial thing. It's a very religious thing to them. But
Does everyone?
they have it divided. They have a men's side and a woman's side. So women have their, what they're supposed to wear, and men have what they're supposed to wear. Yeah, and you know, if I remember correctly, and I think I did, Gentiles can go in there, and I think if I remember, I went up to the wall and was able to touch it and see all the notes crammed in there. So they don't restrict it to just Orthodox Jews. Yes. Okay.
Did you, jot notes in that?
No,
Oh.
I did not do that. No notes.
Think that it was declared right for Jerusalem to be the capital instead of Tel Aviv, or do you think that was just a political sign?
Well, I mean, Tel Aviv wasn't, it wasn't a part of Old Testament Israel. It comes later. I don't remember the history of Tel Aviv, but I'm sure that gets set up sometime after. Ooh, I don't know. I didn't want to say. But
The Golden Heights.
well, no, I mean that was in the '60s, but Jerusalem does not have all the big skyscrapers, the infrastructure. Tel Aviv is a modern, built-up city, and I think that they specifically left Jerusalem to be less built up because it's the center for three faiths right now, and you can't really, or two faiths a little bit. You've got to be careful because there's all of these regulations and things that you can do and you can't do. This is just the old city, though, like I was telling you. And it's now divided up into four different quarters: a Muslim quarter, a Jewish quarter, an Armenian quarter, and a Christian quarter. And each of them have their own landmarks. They get in skirmishes with one another. Um, you know, Sometimes you have to cut through one quarter to go to another quarter. And then the Dome of the Rock, the Temple Mount, is largely in the Muslim quarter.
Is it all very obvious, like you don't accidentally go in the Muslim quarter when you thought you were in the Christian quarter?
Well, you can go in the Muslim quarter, but I mean, if you get overtly expressionistic about something contrary to Islam, then you probably will get,
Beheaded.
no, it's not. I'm pretty sure that Sharia law is not really in place in the Muslim quarter. It's still a more cosmopolitan place. So it's not Saudi Arabia in there.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
Would you accidentally go into a very well marked you're about to enter this quarter?
I don't know that I remember that. You walk through and it changes. I mean, you have to go through certain quarters to get access to this. Because there's only, I think the Muslims actually have to come into the Jewish quarter to go up into the Temple Mount. And sometimes when the Jewish people get mad at the Muslims, they close access to the Temple Mount, and the Muslims get mad. Don't be persuaded by what you see on television that that's what it's like in the Muslim quarter. And if you walk in there, they're all going to come after you because you're some Gentile-looking person. There's a lot of tolerance in the Holy Land because there's a lot of markets in the Muslim quarter, and they want to sell to people. So there's different, even within these quarters, there's different pockets of how serious and intense you are about your faith, right? So there's going to be, there's a lot of just very tolerant Muslims out there that really don't, that are not into Sharia, that don't like Sharia, that are really laid back, and you'll get some of those in the Muslim quarter. But the shopkeepers, one of the shops that we went to a lot as students was a Muslim shop. It was run by a Muslim. When I was studying at Jerusalem University College, he would have flags up of all the schools in America, University of Texas, A&M. He was catering to people to come into his shop. You walk in there, he gives you a drink. He was very laid back, and they want that sort of commerce. They want that sort of they're selling you things. So, Vera?
So I have a comment and a question. So when you go to Berlin, Berlin was divided
Right.
into these sections.
Yes.
Well, what interestingly, one section of the western part of Berlin was Kreuzberg, and that was Muslim home. And now it is extremely Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
You will know exactly that you're there. You don't have to pass the gate.
Right.
I mean, there was the Charlie Gate for the Americans.
Yes. Right.
But you can still see that. But the Muslims in Kreuzberg, the women all will wear these black.
Right.
And the vendors, there are lots of vendors, but you will know which section you are in because of the way the vendors. There are only Muslim vendors in the Muslim section.
Okay.
So that there you know.
Right.
So, but the question for me, what is the difference between the Muslim and the Armenian quarter?
So the Armenian is a type of Christianity, right, from Armenia. It's more of an Orthodox Christianity. The Armenians are constantly sort of at odds with Turkey. Turkey committed a lot of genocide against the Armenians at the end of World War I believe, and killed like 100,000 Armenians, and so they despise Turkey to this day, and so they said I don't know how they came to settle this. There is a patriarch there. It looks like maybe of the Orthodox faith. So, Armenian is very Orthodox and very, established there. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is, the traditional site where Jesus was crucified and buried, is over here in the Christian quarter. But I think I probably mentioned to you before that the church is overseen by Muslims. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Yes. They have the keys. Because some years ago, the Armenians, the Christians, the Catholics all got, you think your Lutheran church has got conflict. They all got in a fight with each other about who is going to hold the keys to the church where Jesus was crucified. And they could not agree. They fought. It was ugly. The settlement that they came to was that a Muslim family would be given the keys to the Christian church. And every morning, somebody from the Muslim family comes and unlocks the door. Yes way, of the Christian church. Yep. So, yeah, it was so bad that, this was like 150 years ago. The church was under construction at the time. And if you Google the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and you look on the second floor, you'll see a wooden ladder that extends, because they were painting the church at the time. And the agreement that they made with each other is you have to leave the church exactly the same. Nobody can touch a thing. So that construction ladder is still there to this day. 150 years old. Yep. Can't be touched. So,
So the different kind of, I only know about the different kind of hats because within the Jewish people, because you say the Armenian patriarch. So what does he look like compared to?
Well, I mean, I think the long black flowing head covering. They typically have long beards, glasses. The Roman Catholic will either be dressed in white or red, and I think that the patriarch is typically dressed in all black, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and so, but they still have all these gates, and a lot of times the gates might be named towards the direction of something. Like the Damascus gate is named because if you go north, you go to Damascus. And you would leave out of that gate of the city to take the road up to Damascus. So, if the Damascus gate was present during the time of St. Paul, when he got his charge to go persecute Christians, he would have left Jerusalem out of the Damascus gate. Jaffa, maybe if you're going to go to Jaffa, the Dung Gate, right, still there. The Golden Gate, and it says closed, that's the gate that was open to the Temple Mount, but there were some traditions or something that said that when Jesus returns, he will sit down on the Mount of Olives and he will walk into the city of Jerusalem. And the thought was that he was going to do that through the Golden Gate there. So the Muslims closed it up. And then they put a cemetery in front of it. They put a cemetery right here because you can't walk among the dead or you'll be unclean. So that's still there. Yes. Yeah. And actually Mount of Olives, or right around there has a lot. People want to be buried there too. There's a lot of cemeteries there. I think that's where like Oscar Schindler's buried. Yeah.
Running out of property.
Yeah, I mean there's not a lot. There's not a lot.
Do the burials, are they in boxes or are they underground? Aren't they stacked? Or they're just stacked, aren't they?
No, I mean you will get some of the bigger tombs that are carved into the rock out there that are centuries old, but I think a lot of them are above ground. Um, when I was there, we did watch Schindler's List one night, and then if you remember that movie, at the end of it, people go and they put rocks on his tomb at the end as a sign of memorial, as a sign of remembrance. And so, interestingly, after we watched it, we were like, let's go see his tomb. So we all left and we went down to his tomb, and sure enough, it had all the rocks on it, and there he is buried in Jerusalem. And he was German, right?
German, who hired Jews to run his factory.
Yes.
But we learned that the Nazi government got the fall. He took as many Jews as possible and hit them.
Right.
So the war was over.
Yeah.
The factory is still there.
Did you? Okay. Yeah.
We haven't been buried in Jerusalem because he saved Jews.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, so it's interesting that they have that notion, but obviously the walled city today is much smaller. The boundary lines are different, because you've had a number of empires that have come in and conquered and left. The Babylonians, then the Romans, right? Then the Muslims came in. Then you had the Crusades. So there's just been a lot of back and forth. The Byzantine Empire, a lot of back and forth with the walls and where they are, and then people, develop places to live. My favorite conspiracy theory is that one day the Vatican will be gone and they will move it here.
Oh.
And the Pope will rule from the Temple Mount in fulfillment of, that's like all of the eschatological views, dispensationalism and amillennialism coming together at the same place. So yes, Wayne.
Did any of those gates fit the description of the Eye of the Needle?
Oh, it's easier for a camel to go through an eye of the needle. I don't think so. How do you mean by that?
For the camel, but look at it, drawing it looks like the Eye of the Needle.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean they might all have that resemblance, right? Because they're there in the walls. Like I said, this is a very common one that people will enter to go into the city. So you have the wide walkway here. It's like I told you, it's elevated, and so the bridge is here because this drops.
Is that a moat?
No moat, but it's sort of like stuff just grows here. I don't think that they really cultivate it and keep it up. Down at that lower level, though, you will find some of the original stones that were left there by the Romans when they toppled it. That was one of the things that, when Jesus said not one stone will be left upon another, you literally find that. They had uncovered that not long before I went there back in 1999. Mark?
It looks like they really rushed. They all the big stone on as it goes higher.
So the bigger stones were more original. Those would have been the ones the Romans built. The little ones, and this is how you can tell this because many of the synagogues are the same way. These were built by people later on. Like these might have been the one the Muslims put up in the 600s.
Does that gate ever close or does it stay open?
I don't think it closes, but I'm not sure about that. Maybe if there's some unrest or something. But typically the only place where you really get unrest in the city is by the Temple Mount. You know, occasionally you will get sort of skirmishes between the different quarters, but not often. Mainly it's by the Temple Mount because, you know, the Jews will go up there and say things or, you know, hey, this is going to be ours again someday, or, you know, they take a lamb up there and they sacrifice it to show that, oh, the temple's going to come back, and then all the Muslims get upset and angry, you know.
Don't they have like a Superdome over there or something like that?
Not in the old city.
So do they carry away some of the temple stones and build other things with it?
Possibly.
Much smaller. Why did they need to have the new stone? Is it different?
Well, I mean, the city burned. The city was burned a couple times. The stones were pushed over the edge. They would break, I'm sure, when they would hit the ground. There was an attempt by the empires to decimate the city and to tear it down as a way of making a statement to the Jews that, hey, you rebelled, you did this, so now we're going to make sure that you pay for it. Yeah. Yeah. It is a place to go. It's a place to see, and it's, unforgettable. You can see, let's see. No, they look like they're walking. I'm trying to see if anybody is on a mat here. I took a picture of somebody that was on one when I was there. But she would have like just a cardboard box that she had cut up, and she would be sitting on it because you can't just sit on the stone. And she would beg from, the mat.
Why can't you sit on the stone? Is it so rough or what?
It's scalding hot.
Oh.
It is hot here. Try toasting at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what the weather is like over there. Is it cold, hot all 4 seasons?
No, they don't have 4 seasons. They have 2 seasons. They have a rainy season and a dry season. So the rainy season goes from like November to May. It rains a lot. All the vegetation grows, and it's cool. And then from about maybe a little bit somewhere in May to probably September, it's the dry season. So it gets very hot. The sun kills everything. It scorches everything, and the land gets very hot. I mean, it's like a desert. So, it's a 2-season country where you get those polarizing extremes. So, all right, let's close in prayer. We will have Psalm 24 then that we'll study next time too. Good and gracious God, we thank you, Lord, as we continue to learn about the Holy City and about the 24th Psalm. Strengthen our faith that we may sing these words and look forward to your coming as we rejoice that you bring our salvation. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Oh, yeah.